Welcome everyone, and this is Danny. He's a partner from Archetype, and also they are providing venue, and also Archetype is one of our, it's our leading investor. And today, want to say a huge thank you to Danny for supporting this event. So I think I will let Danny introduce himself and Archetype a little bit first.
Great, thanks Dylan. Excited to be here. Thank you all for joining us today on a rainy Saturday in New York. As Dylan mentioned, my name is Danny Sursock. I'm a partner at Archetype, where I lead all of our research and investments in the decentralized AI category, more broadly. Archetype's an early stage crypto VC. We're based here in New York. The firm's been around the last 4 or 5 years, but the team's been in this space for significantly longer than that. And our mission has always been to identify, partner with, and accelerate the most ambitious early stage founders in crypto, from base layer infra all the way through to the consumer application stack. So thanks all for joining us. Should be a fun day of conversations, building, and ultimately a judging competition.
Sure. So to introduce myself a little bit, so I'm Dylan. I'm one of the founders at Pond. So to kick things off, since lots of us today, I assume you are working on an early stage AI project. So the first question I will ask Danny is really about, so from the VC, from an investor perspective, if you are evaluating an early stage AI project, especially they are pre-product, product market fit, pre-team, what would you focus on?
Yeah, I mean, so obviously by definition, if you're pre-product, right, there's not that much that you can really tell a story around. But first off, I think the thoughtfulness is really, really important. So the thoughtfulness at really every layer of the stack, right? You don't necessarily have to be, building everything from the base layer model all the way through to the consumer front end stack. But I think you should be really opinionated about, like, for example, what kinds of models you want under the hood. And that should be ideally dictated by considerations like economics, latency considerations, different modalities, what your users and your devs are saying to you. So I think thoughtfulness is a really critical part of it. I think the second one is economics. So unlike, traditional software, right, there's actually a marginal cost associated with scaling up AI products. And so what might work today with a small user base of a few thousand people, if you're lucky enough to scale up to 100,000 or 1 million users, your costs will grow accordingly. And so having a really good thought process in terms of how you optimize your stack to be really cost efficient, ultimately thinking towards what monetization look like, I think is really, really important. And the last is, just because you can't necessarily show metrics at scale doesn't mean you can't show something that's quantifiable early on. So maybe you ran a beta test with a few early users or a few developers. What was their feedback? How long did they spend on your platform or your tooling? How much did it impact their workflows and accelerate the kinds of things that they're doing on their end? So it's about telling a very holistic story, ranging from the qualitative, the thoughtfulness, to some starting points of quantitative metrics as well.
Yeah, so if today someone is working on an early stage project, because from one of our meetings before, you mentioned, the most ideal format is really an investor goes to you rather than a project goes to the investor, right? How do you think a project, what they will need to be in a position that an investor will approach to them instead of they come to the investor? Or, slightly worse case is, a project approaches to investors, right? So how, for example, different projects can approach to, a renowned and reputable investor like Archetype?
Yeah, the first thing I think is, like, how well are you telling your story in the broader world? So, like, how active are you on Twitter, in developer chats, in Discords? How well are you getting your name out there with really, think about like the 1,000 true fans model. That will actually dissipate over time to the right investors who are paying attention to this kind of stuff. So first off, how well are you telling that story? Second, you can get a connection to any investor that you want in the world, realistically. You just have to be thoughtful, right? It might be first, second, third degree connections, but if you're really intentional about it, you can find a route in. So not everything has to be a cold intro. You can actually find warm intros in. It just might take a few different steps where you really have to work towards and earn it. And the third thing is, like, when you do finally get in front of a VC, be really thoughtful about, like, why you should be in front of them and why it's worth their time. So have done your work in terms of what does their existing portfolio look like and how do you fit into that stack from a complementary standpoint. Conversely, you can think of it if they have competitors in their portfolio, why they should also consider you as an investment they should make. So there's a whole range of things that I think you need to bring to the table that shows you've actually done your work to this VC, you really care about them, you understand their thesis, you understand how you fit in their portfolio, versus just sort of like pitching the same cookie cutter thing that you might have pitched to 50 other VCs.
Yeah, so we all know that AI is advancing, especially it's changing how applications are built. So previously it will take 20 people to build a product, but nowadays it probably with Cursor or other AI tools, it will only take 2 to 3 people to build on that thing. Do you see increasing deal flow on your end as an investor because it's getting easier for people to develop different products nowadays?
Absolutely. And I think it's a double-edged sword where on the one hand, AI being this incredibly powerful generative technology, coupled with crypto, which I think brings like a full financial stack, so to speak, it means that you have a much broader group of people that can suddenly be founders and builders and sort of go to market with a product offering that looks exciting early on. And so we think that's really, really exciting, and we're already starting to see that. The counter to that, though, especially from the perspective of an investor, is there's a lot of false signal. So relative to what it was even just a couple of years ago, somebody can come to market with something that looks really beautiful in beta form or as a demo. And you might think of that as like it's already a holistic offering that works, when it might actually be the case that it is incomplete on the back end, or it can't be stress tested when it hits a certain number of users. So for us, it's about having that nuanced understanding of like, we appreciate the fact that there's a whole new user base, a creator base of people that can actually build companies and scale them, but also thinking through like, not getting false signal, not getting sold with something that looks like a shiny new toy when we really have to do our work on the back end and think through, does this meet the standards that we're actually looking for across the board?
Right. So realistically speaking, because we have more and more early stage AI projects today, as you mentioned, you have seen, what's the right mentality for founders? They should set their expectation and, what you think they will need to change from their mentor perspective about how they want to raise from a VC or how they want to spin off their project.
Well, I do think one thing is like AI is such a empowering technology that it means there's a lot more noise even from the perspective of a founder. And so like where before you might be able to be first to market and have some sort of an advantage by doing so, with AI, you'll have 1,000 competitors doing anything that you want, and they'll have products or technologies that look really performant as well. And so you have to go that extra mile to tell a story that puts you above the rest of the competitive layer, because it's a lot more noisy than it used to be. I think that's the single most important thing, is recognizing the fact that like AI, the advantage that it brings and works in your favor is something that is also true for your competitors. And so you just have to be mindful of that and constantly trying to stand out from what is an increasingly noisy and saturated crowd.
Right. So with the advancement of AI, like you mentioned, apparently that it seems like the coding skills doesn't really matter that much, as at least as not as important as before. But what do you think that what have changed that can make projects stand out more?
I think so. I would say that to an extent, the technical depth that a founder brings to the table might not matter in the same way that it used to, but it still does matter, because if you hold constant, for example, like the capabilities of the AI stack that exists today, the thing that'll make a founder stand out or have more success at the margin is actually the technical nuance that they bring to the table. So for example, if they're using a bunch of different models, like how they're orchestrating across the different ones and how they're load balancing between the two during different uptimes or demands or latency considerations from the users, how can they be more efficient in terms of cost at the margin again? So being thoughtful around the compute providers that they're using on the back end. There are different optimizations that they can make on the memory side to have better experiences for users or developers over time, where you don't want to necessarily overload the context windows, even as those are getting larger. So I do actually think the technical side is still a differentiator if you think sort of like the benchmark has risen for everybody. The thing that will bring the exceptional founders to stand above everyone else, I do think will in part come from a better technical understanding of the stack, even if it doesn't mean you're going to go and train your own foundation models from the start.
Right, got it. So we probably will take 2 questions from the audience. Does anyone have any questions for Danny?
I guess, let's say you're a founder that wants to build in the consumer AI space. What is like the best way to build so that you have vulnerability against the tech giants that might be able to replicate or do something similar and have a much larger distribution network?
I think it's a great question. I think you really have to think like left field. I mean, truly try to think about completely novel experiences and applications, because you're right. If it's sort of like a marginal improvement on what already exists today, the larger companies out there will eventually expand into it. And so my suggestion would almost be is go far out on the spectrum of creativity as you can and see what's going to work. Not all of it will work. Some things will break, but at least you'll start so far in advance that you can create a wedge where by the time the existing platforms catch up, you'll have a really good user base, you'll have a brand, you'll have gotten feedback in terms of like whether the positives or the negatives that you can use to refine your product offering, et cetera. And so that's what I would do. I would create as much distance as you can from the leaders of today, and that'll give you an advantage.
Yeah, most founders usually run like a process when raising from VCs. What is the VC process from the other side of the table, and how long does it really usually take to build up conviction on that?
Yeah, and I think it depends on the VC and it depends on the company. But like in an ideal scenario, the VC already has a thesis, broadly speaking, about what it is that you're doing, right? They might even have a good understanding of what the universe looks like of you and your competitors. So they have some sort of thinking. If as a founder, you can drive a really efficient process in terms of like telling your story in a really compelling way, you have some depth that creates a little bit of FOMO. Most VCs then will run a 2 to 3 week process where they'll have 2, 3, 4 meetings with you. It might grow sequentially in terms of the number of people from their side at the table. So the first might be 1 VCs at the table, then they might have 2 or 3, then you might get the whole team, then you get like a final boss, like the GP or whatever. But 2 to 3 weeks, I think, is right. If they are trying to extend it anywhere beyond that, especially at the earliest stages where there's really not that much you're diligencing, they're just trying to build conviction on their end because they either don't understand the technical stack that you're working with, or they're waiting for another investor to come in with a term sheet so that they can sort of borrow conviction. But I think the right process, 2 to 3 to 4 weeks, is probably on average where I think you should be.
Right, so I gotta wrap up because it's gonna be the next Fair Chat. But feel free to talk to Danny after this Fireside chat. Fireside chat. So yeah, guys, Danny from Archetype. Thank you so much. Right.
Yeah, Daniel and I, we work together at Blackbird, and I recently moved to the Pond team, which I'm very excited about and excited to meet all of you guys. So we're here to talk about PMF. Both of us come from more of a consumer-oriented background, so that's probably where we'll spend our time chatting. But yeah, I guess Daniel, I don't know, how do you've been, I'll let you introduce yourself, but yeah, I guess, after your intro, how do you think about your users and how do you make like the best product for them?
So I'm Daniel. I'm at Blackbird. Before that, I was at Uniswap working on the Uniswap wallet. And before that, I was at Helium. I saw a Helium mobile hotspot in the corner, which is really cool. And I worked on the Explorer there, like the map. And so I've been thinking a lot about, also for context, I'm an engineer, front-end engineer. But I've always kind of seen engineering as like a means to an end. So I've always kind of thought about things from the product perspective. And I guess generally my thoughts on product market fit stuff is kind of like, it's like as much art as science maybe. Like it's really important to like measure things, but I think it's also really important to just like be super honest with yourself and like actually put stuff in front of users and like actually ask the hard questions of like, don't tell me what you like about it, tell me what will make you not use it, or like what you don't like or what doesn't make sense. Because I think a lot of the time it's like really easy to like delude yourself into thinking that people are connecting with something because they'll give you positive feedback. Like I think people's general reaction is like thumbs up, like looks good to me, because they want to be nice, they don't want to hurt your feelings. So you kind of have to explicitly ask people to like tear your product apart. And I think that's kind of something that a lot of people like say they do but don't actually do, because it's kind of like scary and like nobody likes to like invalidate their their assumptions or their like ideal feedback. I don't know, that's kind of generally how I think about it.
Yeah. I mean, early days at Blackbird, it was just me and our founder and our designer, and we're like, okay, how do we make crypto and payments and restaurants all work together? And it could take a lot of different forms, right? We could just be, a network and like a back-end service for people, but given where we're at, the skill set of our team and what we wanted to build, we were like, okay, we want to be like in the face of the consumer. We want to build something sticky and be growth-oriented. And then win as many restaurants as we possibly can. And then, like Danny talked about your 1,000 true fans. Daniel was certainly one of them. So super early on, at Blackbird, we knew it was a kind of a funky experience. And so we would just sit at Upside Pizza, which was one of our first restaurants. It's just a pizza shop pretty close to here, see if people used it and then ask them questions. And I saw Daniel check in. I have seen him in our database just like racking up check-ins, and I'm like, I got to talk to this guy. And so yeah, I mean, from there, we fostered a relationship, and I just asked him a bunch of questions, like, as a user, as an engineer, as like a product expert, like, what do you think about the product, and how could what do you care about? And for him, honestly, he is very much like a crypto, like decentralized maxi in some ways, and so. No one even knew this at the time, and I think many people still don't, but we put a bunch of data out publicly about like our check-in data, right? It's like, okay, every day, who's checking in where, and Daniel had built the Helium Map Explorer, so I was like, this is perfect, you could build one for us.
Yeah.
And he wasn't even working for us.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I don't know, I just talked to him, and I got him super excited, and eventually parlayed that into a job. But yeah, I think it's super, super important to try to learn, like, who are your users, right? Like if you're building a consumer app, like Blackbird is kind of special where there is like an IRL experience, but Pond is not an IRL experience, but we're having this hackathon. We want to talk to people like you guys who are builders, and that's who we're serving. And so yeah, that's kind of the main point of all this. But
totally.
Yeah.
And I think there's something interesting too at Blackbird, but at a lot of I feel like as soon as you have crypto involvement in your product or like the promise of an airdrop, I think there's like, it kind of just like muddies things even more than it already is in consumer apps, because then it's kind of like people, I think, couldn't even tell you honestly if they like something or not, if they're there because they want an airdrop. So it's kind of like, I tried to, I was super excited about Blackbird partially because it was like, oh, these points, like I feel like they could be worth something, but also like I was just really excited to see a team that was approaching a crypto thing from the perspective of like, how do we solve an actual real problem? And like the offering isn't just, it's crypto. Like, cause I feel like that's kind of the case most of the time with crypto things. And so I feel like I don't know, as soon as you touch crypto, I think product market fit, like conversations or like the lenses around it kind of get really, really blurry, and it gets hard to see. So I was really impressed from the outside seeing that at Blackbird. And I think that's like a good way to think about it is like, it has to solve something real. You have to be solving a real problem. And like, I think there's a lot of different angles to that at Blackbird, and I would say we're still kind of figuring out the exact right pieces of that, but it's coming together, and I think people are really excited in a way that's not just for the token.
Mm-hmm. And how do you think about different user groups, right? Like Blackbird in particular has like two pretty distinct user groups, although even on like the consumer side, you could probably break it down into like the airdrop farmers and like the more like Lux, Delta Sky Miles people maybe.
Totally.
And then there's the restaurant side, which is like, even then there's different user groups there. There's, the quick service coffee shops that just want people in and out, they want more customers. And then there's the larger more upscale restaurants that are like, I want to deliver the best possible experience I can for these people. I want to know who they are. So yeah, how do you think about like segmentation there? Are you more looking at data, or how does that affect how you build interfaces for these types of people?
Yeah. I think you could probably ask that question to everyone at Blackbird and get like 50 different answers. So it's kind of, my personal take is I think like, it's really good to measure things, but as soon as measurements become, there's a quote, like as soon as a measurement becomes a target, it's kind of useless, or like you can kind of game the numbers to get to that number then. And so I think like it is really important to measure things, but not to make it the target. But I think in terms of distinct user groups, it's really, I just kind of think about it in terms of like, it is a really hard challenge to answer to all of those different user groups, but each one probably is going to have a lot of different feedback. And so it's kind of like, that's kind of the hard part of startups is like meeting all of that feedback and making sure that, you're one, like, building the right thing for the right people. You can't make everyone happy. And so like, it's kind of, I think about it as kind of like one of the hardest questions is like, who are your users? What problems are you solving for them? And like, how many of those can you actually realistically solve? So that's kind of a broad answer, but that's how I've been thinking about it. And I think it's like something that evolves every day.
100%. Yeah. I mean, I think about like our time together and like how we were thinking about things. And, we had a really good designer super early on at Blackbird, and, his whole thing was make it as simple as possible. I don't care if it's like harder, like on the engineering side, like only make it so it's like, okay, you come to the screen, you know exactly what to do. And even after he had gone, we started building like our own makeshift POS, right? So we can actually accept payments. And we're like, okay, what is like the minimum possible thing that we need for someone who might, like, especially at a restaurant, it's like someone who might be trained on like a different POS, and they have, you don't want to make it so they have to learn Square and then Toast and Lightspeed and Blackbird or whatever. And a lot of these people end up, there's high turnover in restaurants too. So yeah, I mean, I just remember thinking about that, and that was a really like tough week trying to just like put something out there. And yeah, so I guess, maybe talk about like, how do you iterate quickly when you sort of run into this, like you have a thesis and then there's like a quick invalidation, and how do you navigate that situation?
Yeah, I mean, I think iterating is really important, and like it's kind of, I think it's kind of goes back to what I was saying before about like you have to ask the hard questions and like actually put it in front of people and like actually talk to people using it in the real world. Because like Blackbird for me was a cool, like very tangible thing where I can go to a Blackbird spot and like see the little device and be like, oh, that's my software. Like that's very tangible, where it's like, oh, I can actually now put myself in the mind of someone who's using it. And like you're saying, you kind of have to, it's kind of design in general and product and everything else is kind of that exact thing of like, it has to be as simple as possible. And I think that's the thing where unless you've actually built stuff before, it's hard, the memes about like never let a backend engineer make a UI. It's just going to have like 50 different settings for everything. It's kind of like, I see it as like a zero-sum spectrum of complexity where like the simpler the interface is, the harder it was to build. And I think Apple's kind of the pinnacle of that, where like they are actually aiming for that target of like, it has to be dead simple, which means it's going to take a lot of work to abstract the complexity away. And I think that's doubly true about crypto. It's kind of the thing that everyone talks about in crypto is like, we need better abstractions, we need better UX. And I think like that's true to some degree. It's also a little bit of a red herring because I think there's so many examples of people who will put up with a bad UX if there's enough value to be had. And so I think it's not the only thing that crypto needs to pay attention to, but anyway, that's another thought there.
Yeah, I think you have to be super, super opinionated about things when, especially like in your first go to market. Like I think like Lovable is a good example. Like, okay, we are using this tech stack. Like we know that we think that this is the best way for you to quickly iterate and build what we think you want to build. So we're going to do that. Same with Blackbird. It's like, okay, there's only like a couple decisions you need to make. Like, are you paying or are you not? Do you want to pay with Fly or do you want to pay with your credit card, right? Like, how do we make that as simple as possible? And yeah.
It's kind of amazing actually how even with a really simple interface, like you would, if you use the core Blackbird experience, like you check in and you get the screen where it's like, pay with Fly or not, you'd be amazed how many internal debates there are and how much thought goes into like even the simplest of interfaces. Like, when do we default on a setting? When do we default off? Like those types of things are actually like really nuanced to get right. And I think iteration is kind of the only way to get there with a lot of these things. And so it's kind of like, I think it's also kind of like you have to have some humility and like just assume that your intuition is going to be wrong. Otherwise, like you could spend a year building something and then put it in front of someone and they're like, what is this? Like, it doesn't make sense to me. And I think like iteration is actually like a really important thing. It's like, you have to kind of fight your instincts sometimes of like, okay, I just need to put a version out there. I don't have to perfect it because it's not going to be perfect. I think that's a hard assumption to make, but I think it's like a really valuable one.
You should be a little bit embarrassed about your MVP.
Exactly.
Just a little bit.
Yeah, exactly. Like if you're not embarrassed, you ship too late or whatever. I really believe that.
Cool. I don't know how much time I think we're probably good on get some questions. So yeah, anyone have any? I saw you raising your hand earlier.
You talk about UX. Do you also think about on-ramping and off-ramping? And how does that play a part in a better crypto experience?
That's definitely part of it.
It was a long debate. Yeah. And I mean, at Blackbird, we got like a good negotiation with a credit card processor to, say this is just like an airline mile. It's not like, even if it is on a blockchain, it's, only spent within this like closed ecosystem. And then, we don't require people to go through like a MoonPay or a Stripe to get there. But yeah, for on-ramping in crypto, that's sort of where you have to be. And there are plenty of good options out there, like Privy, I know, and Decent all have like, top tier UX for, that you could just plug in. And you don't even have to make that decision anymore. You could just be like, okay, they have React components out of the box. Let me just plug them in. And they've probably done a lot of the research for me.
I just have another follow-up question. What blockchain do you guys use?
So Blackbird is on its own L3 called Flynet, which is now, I mean, we're kind of standing up being able to build on top of that right now. And that L3 settles onto base. Yeah.
So something I kind of like derived as a user of consumer tech is that good UX UI leads to like customer acquisition, but like good backend leads to customer retention. Would you say that this is like a true assumption overall? And is it like only true to like B2C? And because like I'm reflecting on your when you're saying that like sometimes people would put up with like bad UX,
Yeah.
backend is true. So like I always like thought like a little bit the opposite. Would you say that there's one assumption would be true for like more customer tech and the like other would be true for B2B internal tools? Just wanted to put that out.
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think like the bar for consumer experiences is like really, really high. And like if you're building, for example, if you're trying to build a messaging app and like, 1 out of 99 of your messages doesn't send, that's like deleted, like uninstall right away. Like I think there is so like stability of the backend is probably like a really high bar. You're right, I think. But I do think there's like, I guess what I was saying with like the people will put up with a bad UX is more, they'll jump through hoops if it's the only way to get something that they actually want, which is rare because usually there's going to be like a bunch of different solutions if there's something and that's kind of just the nature of like problems and solutions, I guess, and how quickly the space evolves. But yeah, I think stability is extremely important.
I think it also depends on like the type of app, not even just like consumer or whatever, but like, at a certain point, consumer apps, like network effects matter a ton, right? And maybe for Blackbird, it doesn't matter like as much because it's more oriented as like a payments app. But yeah, I mean, and then you think of like AWS and like the console there, and it's like impossible for a new user to navigate. And there's so many different configurations you could possibly do, but they are the leader in in compute, right? And so it depends on your user base, right? They know that it's probably a DevOps person who has a lot of opinions of their own, and they don't want to have an opinion about like, this is how you should, have your cluster run or whatever. Like they know their users, and so yeah, I think it depends a lot on on what the app is and who your users are. Yes.
So both of you discussed the importance of iteration and kind of the necessity of that, and having kind of being open to like your assumptions being challenged. What I'm kind of more interested in is like how important is having something really well opinionated out there to kind of iterate from, because there was a slide that you mentioned about Lovable and them really kind of scoping down and having a very specific opinion about, okay, this is the tech stack you're using, we don't care, that's not really what matters, and so on. And yeah, I just kind of love to hear more about that, because if the first product, or even if the first thing that comes out, like you have like the wrong sets of assumptions, or like it's not kind of set up in a way that's easily falsifiable.
Totally. Yeah,
you need to iterate to success.
Right. Yeah, that's a really good point. I think it is really important to be opinionated, I think, at least to the right degree. I remember a quote, I don't remember who said it, but it was like, if you A/B test every single aspect of your product, you'll eventually end up with a porn website, which is an interesting thought. So I think it's kind of like, and then another thought, I remember this is from advice of like writing, but it was like, if somebody tells you something that's wrong with something you show them and gives you a solution, ignore the solution they propose, but focus on like what problem they're raising by saying, like if they give you a suggestion, they're probably pointing out a problem they have, but their solution is probably wrong, but the problem is probably worth paying attention to. So I think it's like it's like art and science kind of like, I think it's you have to be able to like lead. It's also the Henry Ford thing or whatever. Like if you ask people what they want, they won't give you a good answer. They'll tell you faster horses. Like they don't know what's possible. And so I think it's a mixture of like listening to people, but also like leading them down the right path. That's kind of how I think about it.
Do we have time for one more? Okay. Yeah, go ahead.
That's all.
Yeah, go ahead.
So kind of jumping off of that question, you like obviously iteration and feedback is so useful, but how do you know when that feedback, like let's say like it's invalidating your product, is like right invalidation from the right customer profile, or wrong invalidation from the wrong customer that you're trying to target?
Yeah, it's really hard. Like even at Blackbird, we'll have our CEO and founder tell us like, oh, we need like, there's plenty of like things that he's brought up and we're just like, no, this is definitely wrong. And then, we'll get into arguments and he's like, well, if you don't have data, then, you can't validate your assumption. And so, yeah, a lot of it is just intuition and listening. And you can look at the behavior of the user that is suggesting the feedback too, right? Like maybe they are just like an airdrop farmer, like for us, right? Like maybe they are just an airdrop farmer. It's like, okay, if we're making it easier for them to just like do that, then like maybe that's not the goal, right? For us when we were trying to maximize TPV, right? Like total payment volume through our platform. So I think like identifying like your ICP and figuring out like where that feedback is coming from and like what category of user they are and like what their goals are is important. But yeah, Daniel,
no, I agree, and it is very hard. It's just one of the hard problems of like startups, and like you have a small team and you don't have all the data that you want, you don't have all the infrastructure you want, so it's kind of shooting in the dark sometimes. But yeah, that's just kind of one of the hardest problems, I think, but worth focusing on.
All right, give it up for Jake and Daniel.
My name is Talisha. I am the community lead at Lovable. How many people have used Lovable? Oh, good, nice. I don't have to really explain it, what Lovable is. But if you haven't used it or know what it is, Lovable is a vibe coding platform. We like to say we're your AI full stack engineer. We are an opinionated platform, so you can only code in TypeScript. You can't tell it to make you like a Python server. It's going to tell you no. Actually, it'll probably tell you yes and then say no. But you can build full stack apps with it, web apps, etc. We integrate with Supabase for your backend, database, and authentication. So what do I do as community lead? I get to hang out with like cool people like y'all. I also run our Discord community. I run our ambassador programs. I handle partnerships, and I do a lot of workshops and seminars. I like to say that Lovable is a community-led growth organization. We wouldn't be like where we are without our community. They are very passionate about the product, which is really great. And I sit on our growth team, and a lot of the things we do are about going viral by showing what other people can do. So we like to demonstrate all of the different things that you can build with Lovable, the different startups you can start, etc. But that's me in a nutshell. I don't want to like talk for 20 minutes. That's really boring. So I like to answer your questions about community or just Lovable. Go ahead.
Thank you. So the last point, projects and going viral. What were some of your favorite, like, most viral or your favorite projects that, or like projects that went viral that really like stood out in the, I don't know.
So
like built on Lovable.
Yeah, so little known fact, but 21st.dev, their MVP was built on Lovable way back in the day, and they went super duper viral. So I don't know how many of y'all have heard about 21st.dev now, but they're like a components platform. So they have different like AI components that you can copy and paste and import into different AI vibe coding tools like Lovable, Cursor, etc. And their first initial version was built on Lovable, like before I was there, which I think is really cool. Okay, other questions? Yes.
I have like 10 websites built on Lovable.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't try yet about minting NFTs. This is next level, right?
About
minting NFTs.
Minting NFTs on Lovable.
Yeah.
So I am not a crypto girly. However, there are a lot of people who, right. But no, a lot of people have built different crypto and blockchain projects on Lovable. I've seen them. Do I know what's going on? No, not at all.
I'm not a tech person, but I suppose you need to connect with some custodial platform.
Yeah, so Lovable can connect with like any third-party API as long as you're connected in Supabase. So it should be possible. I mean, I've seen people do it. I don't know how to do it, but I know you can do it. Yes.
At what point, so you do community. right?
I do.
At what point should founders be thinking about community rather than just building the product?
Right now, today, before you even do anything, you should be thinking about community. Why? Because with products like Lovable, I can clone your startup in like 15 minutes. So your product is no longer the moat. The people who support your product is the moat. So as soon as you can, you should find out, one, who your users are going to be, and two, where are they already hanging out, and build your community there. So if your community is already hanging out in Facebook groups, don't be like, ew, Facebook, that's lame. No, go to Facebook groups and hang out with them. That's where they are. So yeah, that's the answer. Other questions? Yes, in the back.
Yes. Thank you so much. How are you currently supporting like freelancers and agencies today to earn more using Lovable?
Yes, so freelancers and agencies, the way we're supporting them is we have a partners program where we like promote you to our audience, I guess that's the way to say it. We also build a lot of tools for freelancers and agencies. There's also something really cool that I'm not allowed to talk about. But, okay, I won't tell y'all. But there is a platform that those really great parties that you can sign up for and become a Lovable expert. And we will promote you, wink, wink. So I hope that was clear enough.
When's that happening?
It is happening within like the next 2 months. Yeah. You're welcome. Yes.
Actually, adding to his question, in terms of building the community, I'm right now doing some personal challenge, building something working, problem-solving quickly, and then turning it to the world where I can potentially see the PMF in the future. But what I'm doing, so I thought it would be also really good to collaborate with community team of Lovable, either as an experimental platform where like builder like me can share whatever MVP and then show it to the potential users or other builders. I'm curious what we can do, the builders and the Lovable can collaborate in terms of building more and more MVPs and then prove what's working, or we can do more.
Yeah, so I actually have a couple of answers. The first answer is we actually are starting an accelerator that's kind of for that very thing. So you can apply for that and do that. It's called Shipped. Secondly, you should become more active within not only the Lovable community, but just vibe coding and indie hacker communities in general. The Lovable community, specifically in our Discord, we have like a showcase channel where you can showcase what you've built and people give really good feedback. Also, I spend way more time than I should in our Discord. Like, I live in there. So a lot of times I'm in the voice chat and there's other people and like you can do a whole live demo and there is likely someone who is in your target audience. And also there's more than likely a professional in your target audience, which I think is really cool. Like there's like people who have like 30 years of experience in an industry and in our Discord. And then I think also the last thing is you should not be afraid to ask strangers for feedback. Like if there is someone who you're like, this is my dream partnership or my dream influencer, don't be afraid to like DM them and ask, because I mean people DM like Mark Cuban and get like $1 million invested, so like why not? Like what's stopping you? All they're gonna say is, well, they could just ignore you and then what have you lost? Nothing. Okay, back there in the very back.
Is there any features on the roadmap that you're really excited about?
Well, yes, there is. So we heard it here first, but we are starting to vertically natively integrate everything, which makes me very excited because what that means is even though Lovable is already stupid easy to use, like it's literally just clicking buttons, we're making it even easier to where you don't have to connect Supabase or Stripe or whatever else. You can literally say, build me this thing with these features, and then you wait a couple of minutes, maybe scroll TikTok or Twitter, look at the drama, and then you come back and it's done with everything for you. You don't have to set up your authentication. You don't have to set up your Stripe. It's done for you. And I'm super excited about that because it means my mom can use it, which is like exciting. Yes.
So does that mean it'll basically create APIs on your behalf and then get your keys and then just plug it in?
It will create the keys on your behalf.
I suggested that to your founding engineer.
Oh. Yes.
So, in Lovable, it's like great to build an MVP in a product, but how do you really use Lovable to scale to like a lot of users, especially if you're building something consumer?
Yeah, so I actually get this question a lot, and people are like, how do you scale on Lovable? How do you scale a regular product, right? So it is just code. You should follow coding best practices, building best practices. You should kind of think like a DevOps engineer. But if you don't know what any of that means, if you build an app that goes so viral, it breaks, somebody should be paying you, and then you should use the money to fix it, which is true. I mean, Lovable did that. Before I joined, Lovable got very, very popular, and we got rate limited by GitHub. And then we got really, really popular again, and we had to change our entire code base from Python to Go. So it's not like you have to think about these things on day one, because the truth is, your app is probably not going to go viral. Like, let's all be real here. It's probably not gonna go viral, and you probably will never have to worry about it. But if you get to that point to where it does go viral, one, you should be making money, and then you can pay someone with 30 years of experience that worked at Google and scaled Gmail to fix it for you. Or two, you can just say, oh my goodness, we're so viral, we're gonna just stop for a second, and then you go fix it. And people really, they don't care. Like, people weren't like, oh, we hate Lovable because you got rate limited by GitHub. No, nobody cared. And it was a fun story to tell. Okay. You have another question?
Yeah.
Okay.
I haven't used Lovable actually. So is Lovable, like, you said it's a full stack engineer, but is it specifically for like web applications or is it platform agnostic?
So yeah, it's for web applications. We don't do native mobile apps yet. If enough of you tweet about it, maybe we will. Just saying. But yeah, it's for full stack web applications, but your limitations is literally your imagination. Yeah. Okay. Yes.
It's a great question. So because now apart from Lovable, we have like both for like V0, but also doing the front end generation. Just wondering if like Lovable is doing anything special in terms of Polymarket or something that's kind of like that you think is better than what your backend is part of it, or it's not just about Polymarket, it's just about like doing a really good product. So
yeah, so I definitely think like building a really good, really great, easy to use product definitely has helped Lovable become like one of the top vibe coding platforms in the world. But I think our real like momentum and what stands us apart is really our community. And obviously I'm biased because I'm the community lead, but I think it really is true, because what is really the difference in product between Lovable, Bolt, V0, Cursor, and Windsurf? It's branding. It's not that one is just so much better than the other. Like, is a Coke better than a Pepsi? They're both sodas. Like, you drink it when you're hot. But would you ever see someone like me from Atlanta drinking a Pepsi? No, we don't even call them Pepsis. It's called a Coke, you know? So it really is community and people who just love not only your product, but what they're building with the product and each other building with the product. I mean, some of my best friends I've met in our Discord community. So there you have it.
I wanted to ask about SEO. How we can make the websites run better on Google with the backend?
Yeah, so this is also a question I get a lot. One, you can tell Lovable, like we have this thing called chat mode. So you can turn it on and you can chat without like editing your code, and you can ask Lovable what's the best way to optimize your website for XYZ in SEO. Number two, I think SEO is dead. You should optimize it for LLMs. Like a big chunk of Lovable's traffic comes from LLMs recommending Lovable. So I think it's better to start to optimize for LLMs, because when's the last time you Googled something? Probably been a while.
I read somewhere, I don't remember, that it was having some problems with SEO, the website of Lovable. It was a while ago.
Yeah, I mean, there was this whole, like, because we don't do server-side rendering, so that makes it less good with SEO, which is kind of true. But if you're really good at SEO, it really doesn't matter. Yeah, you can overcome those barriers. And Lovable can help now. We've improved it. Okay, do I have more? Okay, somebody back there had a question. No? Okay, is that over? Are we going to build now? Oh, you have a question.
Hey, Naman, nice to meet you. My question is, what's your North Star metric for community health, like PAUs, engagement rate, NPS, or something else?
Yes, my North Star metric is actually not a number, because I think like making it a number for people is weird. Like, we're more than numbers. So my personal North Star metric for the community is something I call the Saturday night test. And there's a lot of things you could be doing on a Saturday night. But if you are building in the community with Lovable, then we've passed that test. As soon as people would rather go out to movies or spend time with family, even though you should, but you can spend time with your family building on Lovable. But as soon as people don't want to spend like the one free time they have with the community, then we failed that test. Because when you think about it, you're all here on a Saturday building together. This is community. And as long as you have this metric saying, I want to spend time with the people who are doing something that I'm interested in, then your community is thriving. If they only come because you're giving them like free goodies or promising they're going to make money, then they probably aren't that loyal of a community. And it doesn't matter if it's like a billion of them. As soon as something else better comes along, they're going to be like, bye. So, all right. I think that's it. Also, I do have discounts. If you want to use Lovable, you can come see me. Cool. All right.
All right.